Thank you for joining our assess element of our Mindful Teaching Pro live methodology sessions that we are hosting through Pivot Point Lab. Very excited to be here with you today. And if you would like, we are going to get into our interactive slides right away. I'm going to start off with a little poll, and I'm really curious how you felt when you were a student about assessments. Please let me know. I'm just sorry about that. I have to fix this coming through. You can let me know in the chat. How did you feel about assessments when you were a student? Did you feel like you were prepared and very confident? Did you feel a little nervous, maybe anxious when it came to tests or assessments? Were you indifferent? You were just kind of like, neither here nor there, not really, doesn't really matter too much to me. Were you one of those students that actually skipped those days that you took a test? You can answer, if you felt maybe a few of these, you can answer more than one, but let me know. I see in the chat some indifferent going on. Very good. I can see on the screen, for those of you that are on a device and not looking at my screen, 75% of the participants so far have said nervous or anxious. 25% have said that they felt prepared and confident. There was a indifferent in the chat. There is also always prepared, but also anxious. Okay, so that's good. That's kind of two different ones all at the same time. No one's skipping days, so that's good for us teachers, educators. We weren't the ones skipping those days. I definitely had friends that did that. They didn't do well, usually, okay? But just so we can kind of take a step back and look at this, we as educators have a very big part in kind of teeing up and preparing our students for what the assessments are and what we actually do with them, what the purpose is, right? So I wanted us to take a trip down memory lane and kind of look and assess and see what did I feel like when I was an actual learner and when I was going through the process of taking tests, daily, weekly, whatever that looked like. How did that make me feel? And now taking it and today as educators, this is a lot of what our students are feeling too. Even though not anyone, is saying that they skip the days or that they're indifferent, some of our students do have that. Some of our students are nervous. Some of our students are coming in very anxious. Some of our students are prepared and they are confident when they're coming in and, attempting or beginning to take assessments or tests or quizzes. So when we think about that from an educator lens, how can we make sure that we are meeting every student where they are and learning and using the assessment as a tool to help us become better educators and use it as what it is meant to be, as a tool, as a teaching strategy, so that we can learn more about our learners and more about how to help them through their learning process, because that is the ultimate goal. So after the session, we are going to have insight into the importance of providing the evidence of knowing and doing, which is the basic purpose of assessment. We're going to have insight into how assessments support that learning process and how to assess to show that proof of learning. So if we take a look at our mindful teaching wheel right now, we are in assess. So here, the second element of our performance phase. Remember, the performance phase is the third phase of education out of 4. So we are nearing the end of this wheel. Remember, in our performance phase, we are always supporting the student ability. So even though we are at the point where the students are performing and they are, taking these assessments, it's still meant to be a tool for us, again, to support their ability. So how do we continue to use our assessments and utilize them to continue growth in our learners? Remember also that the brains of our learners at this point in the mindful teaching wheel, they're trying to make meaning. So they're still trying to make meaning. So we are still in this learning process. But the main purpose of this assessment, as I already mentioned, is to provide that evidence. So this is where we have this hardcore evidence and we can prove whether or not this learning has occurred. So provide that proof of learning, offer the evidence of that knowing and the doing. When we look at some big topics, the big picture for assessment today, I want to take us through 3 main ideas and some best practices around them. So the first one is going to be that it is a teaching strategy. I've already mentioned this. So how do we utilize these assessments? It's not just that our students take these assessments and it's done and we move on, right? How do we continue to use them as our tool to continue to help learners grow in their learning? And then also we're going to skip into our next topic, which is how to reduce anxiety around these assessments. So in our from just the educators that did participate in our survey earlier on in this presentation, the majority of our responses were either nervous or anxious. So this is something that many of our learners and even ourselves experienced as learners are coming into these assessments with this fear, anxiety, or nervousness. So what are some best practice and strategies that we can do to help reduce that? And then we're going to, the third big topic is going to be that personalized reteach. So if there is any, again, using assessments as a tool. So if someone is not hitting the mark, if we do need to revisit material, it does become very personalized, very one-on-one at this point in the learning cycle. So what are those best practice strategies for this individualized reteach approach? I am going to move us into a quick quiz. So if you are joining me through another device or through your computer, please jump into our interactive slides again. I'm going to show our QR code. So if you'd like to jump in, I'll give everyone a few moments to do so. You can see a few of us in there. I think it might ask for your name. Just throw in your initials, choose a cute emoji. See how many of us are ready to join. If you don't have another device, if you scroll to the top of our chat, I can actually input it again, but there is a link that you can go ahead and follow. It is ahaslides.com, and then there's a backslash. So you can follow that link if you don't have another device in the chats. And I just threw it in into the chat again. Hi all. Okay. Seeing some vampire action. We've got a smiley with sunglasses. I thought that was a sun with sunglasses at first. Oh, I love the haircut emoji. Got a heart. Of course, our buddy Sims, our nail expert, joining us with his nail emoji. See, 8 of us are in the interactive slides and 5 have joined. So I'm just going to wait a few more moments to give everyone some space. I love the little, what is that? Infinity. I love that one. Yes, yes, having more. Okay, so it looks like most of us are in. We do have, I think, a few seconds to take this quiz. Please, if you're not joining through the interactive slides, let me know your response in our chat. So the question is, oops, my goodness, so sorry. Okay, we're gonna start the quiz. We're not gonna move to the next slide. The question is, the assess element provides evidence and proof of learning. The assess element provides evidence and proof of learning. True or false? Got Dolly Parton saying no. Got Michelle from Full House saying you got it, dude. That's true. So yes, all of our participants, yes, in the chat, that is true. Assess The main purpose is to provide that evidence. This is where we actually get that concrete evidence. Sometimes it's, in a firm understanding, which is part of that delivery phase. We also are getting, we're affirming the understanding. We're checking for that understanding. But in assess, we need evidence of that understanding and of learning, proof of learning. Perfect. Great. So let's move into our big picture ideas. The first is looking at our assess element as this teaching strategy. So this is something that, even as I was putting this together for everyone, I was like, I do think it's a good topic to kind of touch on, because it's easy to just kind of take the test and move on. But it really truly is meant to be used as a tool by us, the educators. Definitely, if our students are passing and it's just easy to kind of move on, but we do have opportunities to tune into our learners in a different way and saying, okay, is someone really continuing to do quite well, and maybe let's say hands-on, but maybe some of the written topics that we're assessing on, they're having a harder time. So where can we help them? Because many times our learners are going to have to gain licensure, and many times there are both of those elements. There are practical and or written, and I even know that some of our some areas are now switching to just written. So if our students are having challenges, or there's some ways that we can help them with some study skills, or moving through and helping them actually go through written materials in a different way that helps them make sure that they are proving that learning, then that's really important for us to do for our learners, so that they are successful when they do graduate and move on from school. So the three things that assessments really do for us are they identify the mastery. So where are we doing great? The example that I just gave was, someone's doing great, hands-on, perfect, everything's looking really good, and they're continuing to grow, continuing to improve every single time we're doing hands-on. There's also the opportunity where it provides the improvement areas. So again, going back to that example that I gave, written, just, you can look at a specific student, and when they're doing the hands-on, they're hitting those marks, but then when you're talking about the concepts and they're looking at it in the written, they're not doing as well. But you know that they know it because through hands-on, they are demonstrating it. So how can we help them with that written opportunities? So that's just one example of ways that assessments can really help us as educators tune in, like I said, to our learners individually and help them. The other thing that it's going to do is it helps us improve. It can actually indicate the performance of the educator. So, if some of us are in leadership roles, or if you are leading a team, you can, look at different outcomes of student groups, and that can give you an indicator of the performance of how your educator is actually doing in the class as well. So, really great tool and different ways to utilize it. So again, just kind of taking a step back, because it is easy to get into the flow and just take those assessments and move on, but really utilizing them as a tool, and whether it's, by phase and you kind of take a look back, but it will help the more that you can in the moment after every assessment kind of scan and look through those things. You can even look at lesson challenges in lab and see, oh, everyone seems to be missing question 6. What is question 6? And that gives you the opportunity to kind of revisit that information. So those are some examples of ways that we can use assessments as true tools in learning. Well, let's move into our next big idea. And this is, a big one. And this is that reducing the anxiety. So I'm going to tell you a story, and I am not necessarily proud of this story, but it did help me learn quite a bit. And when I was early on in my educating career, I was teaching a class where we were teaching state boards, hands-on state boards examination, right? So we went through and we prepared the students, but when it came to testing day, I got up, and what I did was I I kind of took on the role of the proctor that I experienced when I went to state boards. So very kind of direct and stern. And I gave the instructions and I said, okay, and move on. And, I said, now we're going into this step. And I read it exactly how I experienced it. And I said, and move on. And a few sections in, I had a student that literally broke down in tears, and I had to kind of take them aside and ask, and they said, this is not you. They said, I don't understand what's going on, but this is not the way that you present information to us. And I'm feeling like you're yelling at us, is what the words that came out were. And, it kind of made me, I took a step back and I said, you know what, you're right. This was your first experience with this. I needed to kind of take a different approach. Just because I experienced it one way that made me very anxious and nervous, by the way, doesn't mean that this is how everyone's experience will be or how I should be presenting it to you as a student. So again, very huge learning experience for me. Again, not one of my best moments as an educator, but I did take it as a learning tool for me to really grow from. And I thought it was a good predecessor to this topic, because providing basic instructions and encouragement, two main things on the slide, are really important for us when we are, administering any type of assessment, whether it's written assessment or whether it's a hands-on assessment. Whatever we are asking our students to go through, our learners to prepare for, we need to be very clear in what that is and let them know ahead of time what this is going to look and feel like. So, just taking a look at also, I think we have it pretty good because we are able to do both hands-on and written assessments. So we automatically are alternating different methods, but what are the other opportunities? Are there other ways for us to kind of assess? Even having students teach or students be, mentors and things like that. What are those opportunities to provide proof of knowledge? So with that said, I do want to ask everyone, how do you introduce and administer your tests? I'm curious. This is an activity in our interactive slides. Please let me know in the chat too. What are some ways that if we keep in mind this idea of reducing anxiety or reducing stress, or being very clear with the directions and the instructions that we're providing, and I'm going to say a few examples, and if these are examples and you're already typing them in, just type them in. I want to see all of the ways. But is it placing things onto a calendar? Is it putting things ahead of, so your students know, yes, this is exactly how this is going to be? Do you take practice tests? Especially those learners that have never experienced a hands-on, what does this look and feel like? Or even digital testing. We're doing digital testing in lab. So what does that feel like? Do you give opportunities for them for your students to kind of warm up? Yeah, I see warm up on here. Use Kahoot contests as a warm up. The students write the questions. That is an excellent idea. That's definitely part of the Mindful Teaching Pro lesson that I took most of this information from. It is 501.19 as the Assess Mindful Teaching Pro. Okay, I see exam prep and pep talk before each assessment. Yes, that's encouraging, and providing that encouragement, making sure that the students are like ready to go. Yes. I love the pep talk. Clear instructions and outline of expectations prior to the testing. Great. How many questions are on the test? That's a good, all students are like, how many questions are there, right? Creating a visual schedule or plan for your students. Vary the type of questions. Excellent. So not just multiple choice. Do you have some fill in the blank? Do you have some, free write or essay, whatever that looks like? We try to do a variety of options, and sometimes we do peer evaluations. Very good. Awesome. The other thing that I like to think about when we talk about the reducing the anxiety, in the introduction and in preparing them so that they know what's to come, but also while we're doing it, right? So are we letting students, as soon as they're finished with an assessment, and let's take written, let's all think written for a moment. Are we letting our students kind of get up and just wander and prepare for the next, if we're having hands-on next, are they able to gather their belongings and get their tools ready? Or are we making sure that everyone is just kind of calm and in one place? Because that's another thing that can cause anxiety for learners when they're going through assessments is, oh, I'm going to be the last one done. I don't want to be the last one done. Everyone's waiting on me. So those are some other things that go through students' minds as well. So making sure that we have a nice, open, and safe space where everyone feels like they have the time needed. Great. Well, thank you. I loved all of these ideas. We're going to move into the last of our topics, and this is that personalized reteach. So this is also, I already mentioned that a firm understanding, that's where we can reteach also, but that's sometimes we'll just take like a group of students aside and we'll reteach concepts. But because this is evidence-based and we are really utilizing that score or how the students performed on the assessment, it's now time to do one-on-one. So this is customized, it's one-on-one, it's where we as the educator really can tune into our learners and where exactly they are. How did the learners feel about the assessment? I always like to ask that question. How did you feel about the assessment, or how did you even feel about your results, right? Because sometimes learners are like, I really felt like I did so great, and they actually didn't. And that especially is happening, when we're talking written. So really good for us to know if they're feeling like they're doing a great job and then the outcome is different, where is the gap? Is there another approach that we need to take? Do we need to try and do verbal, read the tests, or do we need to have someone else do a demonstration, or have maybe the student start a demonstration for you and see where the gap is if we're talking about hands-on? So really, really great opportunities to learn from the tool that is our assessment and where we move forward, whether it's revisiting the information or helping with study skills or even test taking skills. Then this customized one-on-one approach is very, very valuable for your learners. So I am curious if you have, if you had to choose one, I'm going to open up my QR code. You had to choose one of these 3 topics that we discussed today, one or two, let's say. Where do you have the most opportunity for growth? Is it in realizing that the assessment is an actual teaching strategy and it's not just one and done and we're moving on? Is it in preparing and reducing the anxiety of the students when they are entering into any type of assessment? Or is it in that follow-up and really some of that personalized reteach? Well, I see some of those coming through. Great. Let me know in the chat if you are not on our slides with us. Reteach, I see in the chat. Great. I see 2 for teaching strategy so far, 2 for personalized reteach, 1 for the reduce anxiety. Excellent. So we have some definite opportunities. I just ask that when we hang up in a few moments from now, just taking this topic and just jotting down a few ideas of maybe what you can do later today or tomorrow, early next week, to really do try and work on different strategies and looking at this in a different way. So thank you so much for joining. I am going to post the recording of this in our Flip group. You can join here through the QR code. I will put a link into the chat. Just as a reminder, this is a Microsoft. Oh, I had a reduce anxiety in the chat too. So we were kind of even Stevens with everyone's outcomes there. So the Flip group, it is a Microsoft application. So you do need a Microsoft account. You can create your own free account. This is just a private instance where educators that I interact with and through lab, we are giving you the opportunity to watch these recordings and share your experiences, invite your team members to do the same. If we look at our lessons in Mindful Teaching Pro, so this top one, assessed 501.19, this is the lesson that I did reference mostly to prepare for this session today. There are some others that really do align, 501.17 on assessment. And then if you want to dive deeper into retention, which is that brain phase, or your performance phase, which is the third phase of the wheel. So all good, great topics and great lessons if you would like to dive deeper into the subject, and they all kind of support one another. Our last look at this wheel, well, we're going to look at it our next session, but our next session is validate. So validate here in the purple, that will be our last session for this series. And then we'll move into another series. But that is the last element of mindful teaching. So I am eager to meet with you to talk all about validate in the transfer phase. And I thank you so much for joining. I hope you enjoyed our session today and have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your week. Thanks. Thank you, everyone.